The camera loves chaos. Caracas knows it. That's why 3 fast patrol boats slid into a V-block ahead of the USS George Washington. Flags up, crews on deck, angles perfect for broadcast. But this story isn't about missiles or megaphones. It's about discipline. Watch how the US refused the script, gravely accelerated into the gap. The Seahawk captured every heat signature and throttle surge, and one formal warning flipped the burden back on the provocateurs. The result, a quiet retreat and a masterclass in winning the information fight at sea. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. 3 sleek hulls cut a V across the George Washington's bow, tight angles, flags high, yet no one reaches for a trigger. Why? Because the moment the range hit the decision band, the carrier group stayed on rails. Operation Southern Spear emphasized deterrence with steadiness, not a duel for camera crews. The Venezuelan captains angled for a broadcast shot that would play well back home. The US answer was to refuse the scene, hold course and speed, and leave no room for a dramatic cut. At 4 nautical miles, the math gets unforgiving. Closing time shrinks fast. Big ships throw big water. Bow waves start to act like moving walls. Too close, and you can roll a smaller hull or force it to shear off without lobbing a single flare. That's where the danger hides. Not in a missile launch, but in hydrodynamics. The carrier's mass carves a wake that punishes anything that misjudges timing. Every second shaved from CPA ramps the risk that a TV stunt becomes a man overboard reel. Then the choreography clicks. USS gravely surges, angles across the V, and lays steel where the Venezuelans wanted a corridor. One maneuver converts open ocean into a channel. The destroyer's hull becomes the rule set. Pass astern, yield CPA, respect the guard. The carrier never needs to flinch. Instead, a single escort turns geometry into control. The effect is subtle, more distance, less drama, but it's decisive. Those few degrees on Gravely's rudder define who owns the water directly ahead of the carrier's bow. This isn't improv, it's the playbook. COLREGs lay down who stands on and who gives way, even in international waters where flags differ, but collision law does not. The strike group doctrine adds layers. Maintain predictable motion, avoid sudden speed swings, let the escort absorb uncertainty, and keep the carrier's intentions obvious. Posture beats provocation because it preserves both safety and legal standing, and it denies the other side a clip that suggests panic or aggression. Motives sharpen every helm order. Caracas needs airtime, a clip of small warships staring down a supercarrier to feed a domestic storyline. The carrier group wants safe passage and forgettable minutes. That asymmetry drives the dance. The Venezuelans close the gap for the shot. The US widens margins for safety. One side looks for a frame that shouts defiance. The other writes the paperwork that survives after action review. Different goals, different risks, different thresholds. Signals at sea don't need a microphone. Bow wave deterrence says, keep clear or get shoved by physics. Stationing geometry says, we block the bow, you go around. Small speed changes hint to a contact. Your CPA just got worse. Rethink your line. These cues carry weight because they're universal. Water doesn't lie and hulls don't vote. A destroyer at a slight lead, a carrier locked to base speed, escorts staggered to funnel traffic. Each move talks without words. There's another reason the radios stay quiet. Any phrase can be cut, clipped, subtitled, and spun. One hot line in English becomes a meme in another language, so the bridge keeps silence and lets the deck crews work. Later, a single formal maritime warning locks the legal record: position, speed, course, and risk. It's dry and unimpeachable. It also starves the show of dialogue, so that's why no US radio response. The silence denies the staged narrative, and the formal call, logged and timed, nails the legality. But the surface picture is only half the story. What actually changed the standoff didn't ride a bow wave. It sat above the spray, circling, collecting, and watching every throttle twitch and course correction with a better lens than any TV crew ever brought. How do you beat a TV stunt? You film a better show, one the other side can't edit. The answer left the deck in a rush of rotor wash. An MH-60R Seahawk lifted from Gravely and traced a tight orbit over the V-wall, turning a staged run into a grid of data that didn't care about flags or slogans. Every circuit fed the Combat Information Center. The helicopter set the tempo from above, while the destroyer held the lane from below. One collected proof, the other enforced space. Together they cut the oxygen from a broadcast. Venezuelan crews put faces to cameras and hands to rails. The Seahawk pointed sensors at engines. Hot plumes told the truth about throttle setting. Sudden spikes on the heat map matched with small wakes fanning out from sterns. Crew clusters at mounts showed where attention drifted when the range tightened. The helo didn't chase the show. It watched the parts that mattered matter when seconds get short. Power, heading, hands near weapons. The sensor stack mattered. The AN/AAS-44C VFLIR and low-light infrared burned through haze to pull clean thermal signatures off exhausts and gearboxes. The APS-153 surface search radar swept bearings and ranges and delivered speed and closest point of approach in steady updates. Electronic support measures sniffed for emissions and tagged who was talking and what bands were live. All of it ran through data links into the Aegis network, where raw feeds turned into tracks with identity, behavior, and history, with feeds fused, intent stops being a guess. A contact that pushes power, wobbles course, and slides its CPA lower, follows a ladder everybody in the CIC understands. That picture builds both ways at once. Tactically, it flags where a mistake will show up first. Legally, it anchors a self-defense case to something harder than a shouted claim. The record shows what was done, when it was done, and how fast it unfolded. Inside Gravely's CIC, operators lined up helo video with SPY radar sweeps and other maritime ISR. A wake flare on the screen lined with a heat spike 2 seconds later. A bearing drift of 3 degrees fit the radar plot and the helo's range gate. No guesswork, no wishful cuts. The narrative locked to facts because the network made the facts impossible to bend. Here's how it played in one burst. The Seahawk marked a throttle surge on the lead hull. A PS-153 caught the small speed jump and a minor weave off the starboard quarter. The carrier's bow wave pushed a minute later, and the helo stamped the time code on the turnaway. Every move lived on a timeline. If anyone later claimed a shove or a threat, the file had the order of events down to seconds and meters. Restraint stayed deliberate. No flares, no mast height flybys, no rotor wash pushed at a bridge wing. Pressure came from documentation, not noise. The sky wrote the report while the sea stayed calm. That restraint drew a line. Any escalation would stand alone, attached to the track that started it. With that risk, the smarter move was to back off rather than try for one more angle. The payoff arrived quietly. With the complete sensor picture, the US flipped the risk. Any reckless act became attributable and indefensible. The propaganda upside went to zero. And once the burden sat on the V-wall, one transmission, phrased, timed, and logged, moved responsibility across the water. The formation loosened, gaps opened, and those tight angles that looked good on camera no longer held their shape.